She walked into the store just like any other teen, quiet, respectful, minding her own business. But the moment the security guard saw her skin, he made a decision that would change everything. What he didn't know was who her father was. It was the first Saturday of the month, and for 16-year-old Mia James, that meant two things: a break from school stress, and finally the chance to surprise her little brother with the birthday gift she had been saving for. She had spent weeks setting aside tips from her part-time diner job, counting every dollar and coin until she had just enough. It wasn't much, $60 and some change, but it meant the world to her. Her brother, Marcus, was turning 12 tomorrow, and she promised herself that she would get him the headphones he had been talking about for months. That morning, she woke up early despite it being the weekend. Her room was small but neat. A poster of Maya Angelou hung above her bed, and sticky notes with daily affirmations were taped to her mirror. She got dressed in her favorite blue hoodie, her lucky jeans, and clean sneakers. Her mom had left early for her shift at the hospital, so Nia made herself a quick breakfast, toast and eggs, and took the bus to the downtown shopping center. The city was already buzzing by the time she arrived. Families pushed strollers through the plaza. Street performers played saxophone near the fountain. Teenagers laughed outside coffee shops. It was an ordinary, peaceful day. Nia's heart felt light. She loved days like this, when she didn't feel the weight of being watched or judged, when she could just blend in like any other teenager. She entered the electronics store right across from the food court. It was one of those places with sleek glass shelves, big LED signs, and loud pop music playing through the overhead speakers. She had only been there a couple of times before, usually just to look, but today she was ready to buy. As soon as she walked through the sliding doors, she smiled politely at the cashier behind the counter and headed toward the headphone section. Her eyes scanned the shelves, comparing prices and features. She pulled out her phone to look up a few reviews and double-check if the model she wanted was still considered a good buy. She was careful not to touch anything she wasn't sure about. Her mother had taught her that since she was a kid, don't give them a reason, Nia. But only 5 minutes into browsing, something felt off. A man in a black uniform had started following her. She noticed him first in the gaming aisle, standing by the shelves, arms crossed, staring directly at her. At first, she thought it was coincidence. Maybe he was just watching the store. She tried not to make eye contact. She walked to another section, this time toward the cheaper models, further back. She bent down to read the labels. And there he was again, this time even closer. Her palms began to sweat. She turned slightly, pretending to scroll through her phone, but her eyes flicked upward. He was still there, not pretending to arrange stock, not helping another customer, just staring, watching her. A chill moved through her spine. Nia moved to the far left corner of the aisle. She noticed a young white woman picking up a pair of headphones right beside her, pulling them out of the box to examine them. No one batted an eye. No one followed her. But as soon as Nia reached out for a package, one that wasn't even open, the man shifted positions again, now standing directly at the edge of the aisle. "Excuse me, sir," Nia said nervously, trying to stay calm. "Is there a problem?" The man didn't smile, didn't blink. "No problem. Just doing my job." Nia nodded slowly and turned away, heart pounding. "Doing your job." She repeated the words in her mind. That's what they always said. She had heard it from teachers, from mall cops, even from a librarian, once who hovered too close while she tried to check out a book. Nia had never stolen a thing in her life. Her mother raised her to be proud and honest. Her dad used to say, "Your name means something. Protect it like it's gold." But today, her name didn't matter. Her skin spoke before her voice ever could. Still, she pressed on. She picked up the model she had come for, a simple but good quality set of Bluetooth headphones. They were $54.99 plus tax. She held the box gently in both hands and made her way toward the checkout counter. That's when everything fell apart. She was barely halfway across the store when the security guard stepped in front of her. No warning, no words, just stood in her way like a wall. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded. Nia blinked, stunned. I'm going to buy this." The man's voice rose. "I watched you. You're trying to walk out without paying." "What?" she gasped. "No, I haven't left the store. I was just—" "Don't play games," he barked. "I've seen your type before." "Your type." The words hit like a slap. Nia's hands trembled, still holding the headphones. "Please," she said, lowering her voice. "I didn't do anything wrong." The guard grabbed the box from her hands, scanned it, and scoffed. "So now you're telling me you were about to pay? I bet you don't even have enough." "Yes, I do," Nia said softly. "I saved for this. I worked." He cut her off. "Empty your pockets." Her face turned hot. "I don't have anything in my pockets but my phone and money." "Then prove it." Customers had started to stare. A woman near the door paused with her baby stroller, her mouth slightly open. A young couple looked on with confusion, but no one stepped forward. Nia, humiliated, slowly reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out her phone, $60 in bills, and a folded bus card. "That's all," she whispered. The guard snatched the money from her hands and inspected it. "Where'd you get this?" he asked. Nia's eyes began to fill with tears. "I worked for it." He tossed the money back at her. "I don't buy it. Let's go." She didn't understand. "What do you mean?" "You're banned from the store," he said. "Now get out." And before she could even react, he grabbed her by the wrist and walked her to the exit. People moved aside, watching. Her chest was tight, her face red. Her eyes pleaded silently for someone, anyone, to stop him. But the world stayed silent. The doors opened, and the warm air hit her face. The next thing she knew, she was outside, standing on the sidewalk, alone. The guard stood at the door for a second longer, then turned and walked back inside like he had just taken out the trash. Nia stood frozen. Then, slowly, her knees buckled, and she sat down against the side of the building. Her hands were still shaking. Her heart felt like it would explode. She had never been more embarrassed in her life. She wiped her face with her sleeve, trying to breathe. Her brother's birthday was tomorrow, but right now it didn't matter. Nothing mattered. She reached into her hoodie and pulled out her phone. Her hands hovered over the screen for a second, then she typed, "Dad, I need you. Please come now," and hit send. She didn't know what her father would do, but deep down, she hoped he would bring the storm this store deserved. Nia sat alone outside the electronics store, her hoodie pulled tightly around her head, trying to disappear. Her fingers trembled around her phone, the screen dim as her message hung in the silence. "Dad, I need you. Please come now." She couldn't believe what had just happened. She hadn't stolen anything. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't even touched a single item without permission. But still, the guard had treated her like a criminal, humiliated her, judged her. A few people walked by and looked at her, some with curiosity, a few with pity, but no one said a word. She was just a black girl sitting on the pavement. And for most people, that sight didn't raise alarm, it confirmed bias. Even now, she was invisible. She stared down at the crumpled $60 in her lap, feeling like it had lost all value. The money was still there. The gift still mattered. But something else had been taken from her, her dignity, and that couldn't be replaced. Then, about 15 minutes later, a dark gray sedan pulled up to the curb. The engine cut off. The door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a crisp button-down shirt, neatly tucked into dark slacks. His face was calm, but his walk was sharp, purposeful. Nia looked up. Her lips quivered. Dad. Thomas James wasn't a loud man. He didn't need to be. He had the kind of quiet strength that made people listen without ever raising his voice. Years in courtrooms, years in private legal practice, they'd shaped him. But even before the law books and courtroom suits, he had grown up learning how to stay calm in a world that expected him to break. He walked straight to Nia, crouched in front of her, and gently took her hand. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice steady. She nodded, but tears brimmed. "I didn't do anything. I promise." "I know," he said, squeezing her hand. "Tell me everything." She did, from the moment she walked in, to the way the guard shadowed her every move, to the false accusation, to the humiliating walkout. Her voice cracked halfway through, but she didn't stop, and he didn't interrupt her once. When she finished, he stood, slowly, calmly. "Wait here," he said. "Dad, I'm not going to shout," he assured her. "I'm going to make them understand exactly who they messed with." She nodded slowly. She trusted him. She always had. Thomas walked up to the sliding doors. As he entered, several heads turned. A man in a suit wasn't unusual in the plaza, but the energy he brought into the room was different. Focused, like a judge had just stepped into the building. The cashier, a young woman in her 20s, blinked as he approached. "Good afternoon," Thomas said, polite but firm. "Can I speak to your manager?" Sure. He's in the back." 1 second. Moments later, a man in khakis and a company polo came walking up with a clipboard in his hand. He looked to be in his 40s with a tired expression and a badge that read, "Manager Craig D. Can I help you?" Craig asked. Thomas nodded. "I believe one of your security guards just wrongfully accused and publicly removed my daughter from this store." Craig's face shifted, confused but defensive. "You'll need to speak to the guard about that." "Then get him," Thomas said. "Now." Craig opened his mouth to argue, but something in Thomas's tone stopped him. It wasn't aggressive. It was confident, controlled. But clearly, this man wasn't here to play games. The security guard came over, the same one who'd thrown Nia out. He didn't recognize Thomas yet. His arrogance was still in full effect. "This about the girl?" the guard asked casually. "That girl is my daughter," Thomas said plainly. The guard rolled his eyes. "Sir, I saw her. She was acting suspicious, holding boxes, checking over her shoulder. I've seen that look before. She was checking prices. She was making sure she could afford the gift she saved for." Thomas said, "You followed her around. You assumed she was a thief. And you humiliated her. She didn't buy anything. Because you stopped her before she could. I was doing my job." "No," Thomas said sharply. "You were profiling. That's not your job." Craig, the manager, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, if your daughter feels she was mistreated, we can offer her a gift card." "I'm not here for coupons." Thomas cut in. "I'm here for accountability." The room was quiet now. Customers nearby had started to pay attention. Some had their phones halfway out of their pockets, ready to record. Even the music seemed to lower. Thomas pulled out his wallet and laid a black business card on the counter. It read, "Thomas James, ESQ, Civil Rights Attorney, James and Partners Law Firm." The manager went pale. "I specialize in cases just like this," Thomas continued. "And unlike your guard here, I do my homework before making assumptions." He turned slightly so that both Craig and the guard were in his sight line. "My daughter is a minor. You put your hands on her. You removed her from this building without cause. That's unlawful detainment. That's public defamation. That's emotional distress. And considering this happened in front of witnesses, you've got a serious liability problem." The guard's mouth opened, then closed again. He glanced at the manager, suddenly unsure. Thomas leaned in, voice lower now. You humiliated a black girl for existing in a store. You embarrassed her in public. But worse, you reminded her that no matter how good, how honest, or how careful she is, people like you will still see her as a threat. He paused. And people like me don't let that go. Craig was sweating now. Mr. James, let's not escalate this. Thomas raised an eyebrow. I'm not escalating. I'm giving you a choice. Apologize to my daughter, on record, in front of your staff. Or I take this story to every news outlet, file a civil claim before the end of the day, and ensure this store gets all the attention it clearly deserves. Silence. Then, I think we can issue an apology, Craig muttered. I don't want some canned corporate apology from a break room email, Thomas said. I want it sincere. From both of you. In person. Craig looked at the guard, whose confidence had drained completely. They both nodded. Thomas turned on his heel and walked back out the door. He crouched beside Nia again, who was still sitting by the curb. They're coming, he said, her brows furrowed. What? They're going to apologize. Why, she whispered, eyes wide. Because you deserve it. A minute later, Craig and the guard both walked outside. The manager cleared his throat and bent down slightly. Miss James, I want to apologize for the way you were treated today. It was unprofessional and uncalled for. The guard hesitated, then added, I made a mistake. I misjudged you, and I'm sorry. Nia didn't say anything at first. Then she stood. Slowly, she looked the guard in the eyes. You didn't just misjudge me. You made me feel small, like I didn't belong. That's what I remember. The guard swallowed hard. Then Nia turned to her dad. Can we go home? He nodded. They walked away from the store, hand in hand. But Thomas knew this wasn't over, because what happened to Nia happens every day to someone, somewhere, and he was going to make sure this one didn't get buried. Nia thought that after her father's confrontation, things would calm down. They didn't. That night, as she lay in bed scrolling through her phone, she came across a video. It had her name in the caption, Black Teen Harassed at Local Electronics Store. Her dad is a civil rights attorney. The clip had been posted by a college student who'd been shopping nearby during the confrontation. Nia tapped play. The video started with her dad walking into the store, calm but serious. It showed the manager, the guard, and her father exchanging words. The audio was low, but some words stood out. Profiling, liability, apologize to my daughter. She felt her chest tighten. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? Then the video cut to the moment when both the manager and the guard came outside. The clip caught their awkward apologies and Nia's quiet response. You made me feel small. The video ended, but the comments kept coming. This happens way too often. Her dad is a boss. Salute to him. That girl handled herself with more maturity than most adults. Sue them. Name and shame the store. Nia stared at the screen. Part of her felt exposed, but another part felt heard. By the next morning, the video had 120,000 views. Her inbox was full. People were messaging her support. Journalists wanted interviews. Her friends at school were blowing up her phone. Even her teachers had heard about it. And then came the store's public statement. It was vague, carefully worded. We take allegations of misconduct seriously. We are reviewing our internal training practices. We apologize for any distress caused. But nowhere did they mention Nia's name. Nowhere did they say the words racial profiling. Nowhere did they admit fault. Thomas read the statement at the breakfast table. His jaw tightened. They think this will make it go away, he said. What do we do? Nia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas looked her in the eyes. "We make sure it doesn't." Later that week, Thomas took Nia with him to a town hall meeting at the local civic center. Community members gathered to discuss policing, racial profiling, and civil rights. Nia didn't plan on speaking. She just wanted to watch. But halfway through the night, a woman in her 50s stood up. Her voice cracked with emotion. "My son was followed in a store last year," she said. "Didn't steal a thing. But they called the police anyway. They handcuffed him in front of everyone. He was 13. The room went quiet, and Nia felt something stir in her chest. She stood. Her father looked at her, surprised, but he didn't stop her. Nia walked to the microphone. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was clear. "My name is Nia James," she began. "I was kicked out of a store for shopping. Not stealing. Shopping." People in the room looked up. "I had money. I was buying a gift for my brother. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. But I was still treated like a criminal. Why?" She paused. "Because I'm black." There were murmurs. Some people nodded. A few clapped quietly. My dad had to come in and defend me, not because I was wrong, but because someone saw my skin and decided it meant something it didn't. That's not security. That's racism. Thomas watched his daughter with quiet pride. Nia continued, "I'm not the first. I won't be the last. But maybe if we keep talking about it, we'll be closer to the day when no one has to call their dad because they were shopping while black." She stepped back from the mic. The room erupted in applause. And in that moment, Nia didn't feel small. She felt powerful. Over the next week, the video kept spreading. National blogs picked it up. A small media outlet even reached out for an interview. Thomas was hesitant, but Nia wanted to speak. She did it calmly, thoughtfully, honestly. And every time she spoke, more people came forward. Students, parents, teachers, grandparents. Everyone had a story. And slowly, something started to change. The electronics store chain, after heavy public pressure, announced mandatory anti-bias training for all employees. The security guard was suspended pending review. The manager was quietly reassigned. But most importantly, the community had begun to talk. Really talk. Not just about one incident, but about the pattern, the system. And Nia had become a symbol of standing up without shouting, of reclaiming power without violence, of being young and black and not apologizing for it. At home one night, Nia sat on the couch, curled up in a hoodie. Thomas walked in and handed her a small gift bag. "What's this?" she asked. "Open it." She pulled out a rectangular box. Inside was the exact gaming headset she'd tried to buy for her brother. Her eyes widened. "How did you know?" "I asked," he said with a smirk. "I wanted you to have the chance to give the gift you were supposed to." She hugged him tightly. "Thanks, Dad." He smiled. "You gave me something too," she whispered. "What's that?" "Pride. Strength. A voice." Thomas blinked, holding back emotion. "You always had it. You just had to remember it." She pulled away and grinned. "You still planning to sue?" He chuckled. "Oh, definitely." They laughed. But beneath the laughter was a shared understanding. This wasn't just a story about a girl in a store. It was a story about injustice, about being seen, and about what happens when silence is replaced with truth. Thomas uncovered internal emails from the store manager to corporate headquarters from months prior, and they were damning. One email read, "We've been having more issues with certain types hanging around. Security needs to keep an eye on them. Better safe than sorry. Certain types." That was all he needed. It wasn't just an isolated incident anymore. It was a pattern, a culture of profiling, sanctioned, and enforced from the top down. These emails proved that Nia's incident was part of a bigger, systemic issue. Thomas leaned back in his office chair and stared at the screen. His jaw clenched. His instincts were right. He picked up the phone, called a reporter he trusted, and said just 2 words. "Check your inbox." The story exploded. News outlets ran with headlines like, "Electronics store accused of systemic racism." "Teen harassed over skin color. Civil rights lawsuit uncovers shocking memos." "Father-daughter duo brings justice to racial profiling victims." Social media was ablaze. Hashtags like #JusticeForNia and #ShopWhileBlack started trending. Influencers, activists, and celebrities reposted the footage. Even a few famous attorneys applauded Thomas for standing up. Suddenly, the case wasn't just a local matter, it was national. The store's stock price dipped. Corporate rushed to do damage control. They fired the security guard and issued a carefully worded apology to the media, but notably, they never reached out to Nia personally. Thomas noticed that, and he wasn't going to let them control the narrative. A week later, a press conference was held in front of the courthouse. Reporters swarmed as Thomas and Nia stepped up to the podium. Nia stood beside her father, hands slightly trembling, but her voice didn't shake when she spoke. "I walked into a store to buy my little brother a gift," she began. "Instead, I was treated like a criminal because of my skin. This wasn't just about me. This happens to people like me all the time. But most don't get a chance to fight back. I'm here to say, we're not staying silent anymore." The crowd erupted in applause. Her words hit harder than even her father's legal arguments. That day, she wasn't just a victim. She was a voice for the voiceless. Over the next month, more people came forward. 2 former Black employees from the store contacted Thomas. They had their own stories. One had been demoted after filing a complaint. Another had been called a racial slur by the same security guard. Their sworn statements were added to the case file. Another blow to the defense. As the pressure mounted, settlement offers began trickling in. First, it was a quiet call, a polite offer, then another, larger this time. Still, Thomas refused. He told Nia, "This isn't about money. This is about change." But he knew how the game worked. When you hit them in the wallet, they start listening. So, finally, after weeks of negotiations, a settlement was reached. 7 figures. Part of it would go into a new scholarship fund for students of color pursuing law or social justice. Another portion would be donated to nonprofit watchdogs tracking discrimination in retail environments. And the best part? The company had to publicly admit wrongdoing in court. The final hearing came. The courtroom was packed. News crews waited outside. Inside, the judge read the terms aloud. The defendants have agreed to issue a formal apology to the plaintiff, acknowledge the violation of her civil rights, and contribute $250,000 toward anti-discrimination training for all nationwide store staff. Nia held her breath. The security guard, now jobless and humiliated, sat in the back, eyes on the floor. The manager avoided eye contact. Nia stood, took the microphone the judge allowed her, and said calmly, "I forgive you, but I won't forget, and neither will this country." That night, back at home, her little brother ran up and hugged her tight. "Did you win, Nia?" he asked. She smiled. "Yeah, baby, we won." He grinned. "Does that mean I get my headphones now?" Everyone laughed. Thomas walked in, holding a small wrapped box. "Already taken care of," he said. Nia handed it to her brother, watching his joy unfold as he ripped it open. For the first time in weeks, she felt light again. But the fight wasn't over. Later that evening, she sat on her bed, scrolling through messages. Hundreds had poured in. Teens from other states. Parents thanking her. People saying they finally felt seen. One message stood out. "I used to be afraid to speak up. But not anymore. Thank you, Nia. She screenshotted it, saved it to her phone, and knew that her story, her pain, had turned into someone else's courage. Back home, life was trying to return to something like normal. But for Nia, normal no longer existed. Everywhere she went, school, the grocery store, even the park, someone recognized her. Some would whisper, "That's her." Others would come up and shake her hand, tears in their eyes, thanking her for speaking up. Still, not all of it was good attention. There were trolls online, people who called her a liar, said she'd ruined a man's life over nothing, that it was all a stunt for money and fame. She tried to ignore them, but late at night, in the quiet, they echoed in her mind. One night, she asked her father, "Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing?" Thomas looked up from his laptop. He closed it slowly, walked over to her, and sat on the edge of her bed. Every day, he said, honestly, because the right thing doesn't always feel good, especially when it makes people uncomfortable. But justice isn't about comfort. It's about truth. Nia nodded. The words sunk deep. She began documenting her experience, journaling at first, then recording short video diaries. Before long, they were uploaded to a new YouTube channel she titled Nia Speaks. Her first video, a simple, raw monologue. "I'm not a hero. I didn't want to be known for this. But I couldn't stay silent. And neither should you." It went viral within 48 hours. Viewers from around the world started sending in their own stories, some about racism, others about bullying, harassment, or even just feeling invisible. Her channel grew, not because of sensationalism, but because of honesty. She didn't pretend to have all the answers. She was still healing herself, but she was showing up every week. Then came the invitation that changed everything. An email from the Department of Education. They wanted her to join a newly formed Youth Civil Rights Advisory Board, which would be responsible for giving input on national education policy, especially around student safety, racial equity, and discrimination response systems. She thought it was a mistake, but it wasn't. Thomas read the letter with tears in his eyes. "You've started something bigger than both of us," he whispered. The first meeting in Washington, D.C. felt like a dream. She sat across from government officials, educators, and other young activists who had fought battles in their own cities. They shared ideas, tears, laughter, and purpose. When her turn came to speak, Nia told them if our schools and communities had taught people to value each other more, maybe that guard wouldn't have seen me as a threat. Maybe he would have seen me as a kid. Her words echoed in the chamber. One congresswoman stood up after and said that is exactly why you're here. Months later, legislation was introduced, the Equal Respect in Retail Act, pushing for mandatory anti-bias training for all retail employees nationwide, stronger legal protections for minors in public spaces, and penalties for false accusations based on race or appearance. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, and Nia's name was on the resolution as a contributing voice. One afternoon, she returned to that same electronics store. It had changed. New ownership, new signage, and in the corner of the store, a small plaque that read, "We acknowledge past wrongs. We commit to equity and dignity for all." Inspired by the courage of Nia James, she stood in front of it for a while. No cameras, no audience, just her and the memory of that day. Then she smiled and walked out with her little brother, who was now old enough to remember. As the years passed, Nia's legacy only grew. She went on to study sociology and law. Eventually, she opened her own advocacy firm, helping young people navigate discrimination cases and fighting for safer schools and communities. But more than her titles, awards, or followers, she remained a big sister, a daughter, a girl who once felt powerless and turned that pain into purpose. Final note, years later, in a quiet moment, years down the road, a young girl somewhere, maybe in Chicago, maybe in Houston, maybe in a place we've never heard of, walks into a store, head held high. She's confident, proud of her skin, proud of her presence. And if someone tries to make her feel small, she remembers a story she once watched online. A girl, a hoodie, a wrongful accusation, and a father who showed the world she mattered. Because Nia spoke, she now speaks too.